Good morning, students. Welcome to the IGCSE online sessions. This is Mr. Charles, and I'll be with you for the third lesson of week 3. A letter of complaint to J. Gatsby, page 140. This letter was written by a student as a response to question 3, page 139. And the question read, imagine that you live near Gatsby's house where the parties take place. You object to the parties for several reasons, including the lavish display of wealth. So we are expecting this reason to be there. Write a letter to Mr. Gatsby setting out your various objections and justifying each one by developing ideas and details from the text. So why do you object to the parties? Give reasons, including the lavish lifestyle or the lavish display of wealth, and then develop on each idea. We'll read the student's response and we'll criticize it on what's good about it and what are the mistakes done and what can be improved. Dear Mr. Gatsby, I am one of your neighbors. I live opposite your house. We have 2 children aged 7 and 4. I'm writing to you on behalf of the residents in this area to complain about the noise you make every weekend. My wife and I, in particular, find your parties very disturbing. The behavior of your guests is very antisocial and often offensive. We are very worried about the image you are giving to our peaceful community. You are a very bad example for our children. The large amount of food consumed at your parties is a matter of concern, because it is enough to feed everyone in the street. Outside your gates, people make too much noise, and someone has even been sick in our garden. They threw up. We worry about the way people drive. It's dangerous. Last week, there was a fight. We could hear everything that was happening. This is not the sort of behavior we like in this area. My wife has to keep our children indoors every weekend, so they cannot witness what is happening. This brings me to the matter of cars, parking, and dangerous driving. If you must have parties, can't you organize transport for your guests? Next time someone backs into my gates or blocks our drive, I'm going to call the police. Last but not least, I want to complain about all the noise. You have whole orchestras in your garden. It's too much and not fair on those of us who like a quiet life. Also, all the lights keep us awake at night. This weekend, the music went on all day and night. We're exhausted. We can't sleep. Please have some consideration for families with young children. Sometimes your guests come to our door and ring the bell because they cannot move their cars and they need to get a taxi. This must stop. I ask you in the name of all the residents of this tranquil and small community to please show some consideration. We are not all as young and rich as you. We don't all want to have a party every weekend. If you do not stop causing so much disturbance, we shall go to a lawyer, because it seems to me you're bribing the police to stay away. Yours sincerely, Lipton Masterson. First of all, good job for starting the letter of complaint, as we talked about this last session, with Dear X. And since they know them, they address them with Dear Mr. Gatsby. And good job as well for addressing them with their name, not saying Dear Gatsby or just Dear Mr. J. They call him Dear Mr. Gatsby. So the starting with the dear and then saying the name. I am one of your neighbors. Good job for addressing who is filing the complaint. And I live opposite your house, and we have 2 children, aged 7 and 4. The 2 children and their ages also fortify the fact that they are young and they need quietness. They need to sleep. They need to rest. And the noise you make every weekend, this is also to broaden the specifications of the story, to give the story the 5 Ws that we talked about that you must include in your complaint of the treatment, servant, service, or the product that you have received. About the image, we are worried about the image that you're giving to this peaceful community. You're a very bad example for children. You may argue that this is going a little too far for saying you're a bad example. He's using Lipton is using an offensive language. You're a bad example. You may argue that, but you may as well say that they are writing from a whole angry heart. So it could be possible that they justifiably include this statement. Then people are getting sick in our garden. This is also, again, broadening details and going a little extra mile because getting sick or throwing up, vomiting in the garden of someone else other than the house owner, this is a new level of unacceptancy. If you must have parties, can't you organize transport for your guests? Well, this is just a plain mistake because he did organize transport for his guests. This is wrong. They would come either by the Rolls Royce or the taxis. I am, next time someone backs into my gates or blocks our drive, I'm going to call the police. This is a threatening language, so kind of offensive. Also, some people may argue it's unacceptable. But if you decide to keep it because of the nature of the complaint, because the person you're complaining about is so persistent in their breaking of the quietness and the tranquility of the neighborhood that they don't even listen. So for you to reach this level of anger is kind of justified. So you can keep this calling the police, and you're a bad example. Last but not least, I want to complain about all the noise. The style of the whole piece, of the whole complaint, the style and its organization is bad. There's no planning. There's a mix of ideas throughout the whole, especially here after last but not least. This phrase, this expression, last but not least, does not introduce anything that is last. So he says this and then mentions 3 or 4 things after it. What's not last but not least. So the organization of style is mixed. They can't move their cars and they need to get a taxi. They can't move their cars. This is also a mistake, like the can't you arrange or organize taxis for your guests? Because in the text it says that, or it states that there are 5 rows deep, or the rows of cars are 5 deep. So there are places for people to park and not to block anything else. This is misinformation. The yours sincerely ending with it is great since they know the person. They should end with yours sincerely, and the writing of the name as well. A good job. There must be a signature somewhere. Maybe it's not included in this since it's a homework handed in typed. But if there had been a signature, it would even have been better. If you have any suggestions, any improvements, how to improve this letter, we may agree, you and me, that it should be more organized. It should be less of offensive language, perhaps, and it should. I think that would be all. If you have any improvements of your own, try to make them as relatable and as undergoing the rules of writing a complaint as possible. Now go to pages 142 and 143, the devastating costs of the Amazon gold rush. Let's read together. Spurred by rising global demand for the metal, miners are destroying invaluable rainforest in the Peru's Amazon basin. It's a few hours before dawn in the Peruvian rainforest, and 5 bare light bulbs hang from a wire above a 40-foot deep pit. Gold miners operating illegally have worked in this chasm since 11 a.m. yesterday. Standing waist deep in muddy water, they chew cocoa leaves to stave off exhaustion and hunger. In the pit, a minivan-sized gasoline engine set on a wooden cargo pallet powers a pump, which siphons water from a nearby river. A man holding a flexible ribbed plastic hose aims the water jet at the walls, tearing away chunks of earth and enlarging the pit minute by minute until it's now about the size of 6 football fields laid side by side. The engine also drives an industrial vacuum pump. Another hose suctions the gold fleck-laced soil, torn loose by the water cannon. At first light, workers hefting huge steel chain saws roar into action, cutting down trees that may be 1,200 years old. Red macaws and brilliant feathered toucans take off, heading deeper into the rainforest. The chainsaw crews also set fires, making way for more pits. This gaping cavity is one of thousands being gouged today in the state of Madre de Dios, or de Dio, at the base of the Andes, a region that is among the most biodiverse and, until recently, pristine environments in the world. All told, the Amazon River basin holds perhaps a quarter of the world's terrestrial species. Its trees are the engine of perhaps 15% of the photosynthesis occurring on land masses, and countless species, including plants and insects, yet have to be identified. In Peru alone, while no one knows for certain the total acreage that has been ravaged, at least 64,000 acres, possibly much more, have been razed. The destruction is more absolute than that caused by ranching or logging, which accounts, at least for now, for vastly more rainforest loss. Not only are gold miners burning the forest, they are stripping away the surface of the earth, perhaps 50 feet down. At the same time, miners are contaminating rivers, streams, as mercury, used in separating gold, leaches into the watershed. Ultimately, the potent toxin, taken up by fish, enters the food chain. Gold today commands a staggering $1,700 an ounce, more than 6 times the price of a decade ago. The surge is attributable to demand by individual and institutional investors seeking a hedge against losses, and also the insatiable appetite for luxury goods made from this precious metal. Who's going to stop a poor man from Costco or Juliaca or Pono who earns $30 a month from going to Madre de Dio and starting to dig? Asks Antonio Brackeg, formerly Peru's Minister of the Environment. Because if he gets 2 grams a day, Brackeg pauses and shrugs. That's the theme right there. The new Peruvian gold mining operations are expanding. The most recent data shows that the rate of deforestation has increased 6-fold from 2003 to 2009. It's relatively easy to get a permit to explore for gold, says the Peruvian biologist Enrique Ortiz, an authority on rainforest management. But once you find a suitable site for mining gold, then you have to get the actual permits. These require engineering specs, statements of environmental protection programs, plans for protection of indigenous people, and for the environmental remediation. Miners circumvent this, he adds, by claiming they are in the permitting process. Because of this evasion, Ortiz says, they have a claim to the land, but not much responsibility to it. Most of the mines here, estimates are between 90 or 98% of them in the Madre de Dio state are illegal. The Peruvian government has taken initial steps to shut down the mining, targeting more than 100 relatively accessible operations along the region's riverbanks. There are strong signals from the government that they are serious about this, says Ortiz. But the task is enormous. There may be as many as 30,000 illegal gold miners in Madre de Dio. The pit that we visited that day is not far from Puerto Maldonado. The population is 25,000 people. It's the capital of Madre de Dio and the center of Peru's gold mining because of its proximity to the rainforest. In a supreme irony, the city has also become a locus of Peru's thriving ecotourism industry, with inviting hotels, restaurants, guest houses in the forest, at the threshold of a paradise where howler monkeys leap in tall hardwood trees and clouds of metallic blue morpho butterflies float in the breeze. Our first morning in Puerto Maldonado, photographer Ron Haviv, Ortiz and I board a small wooden boat, or barca, and head up the nearby Madre de Dio River. For a few miles upstream, wood frame houses can be glimpsed along heavily forested bluffs. Birds dart through the trees. Mist burns away on the tranquil, muddy brown river. Suddenly, as we round a bend, the trees are gone. Barren stretches of rock and cobblestone line the shore. Jungle is visible only in the distance. We're coming to the mining. We're closing to the mining, says Ortiz. Ahead of us, nosed against the stony banks, countless dredge barges are anchored. Each is fitted with a roof for shade, a large motor on deck, and a huge suction pipe running from the stern into the water. Silt and stones extracted from the river bottom are sprayed into a sluice positioned on the bow and angled onto shore. The sluice is lined with heavy synthetic matting, similar to the indoor-outdoor carpet. As silt, the source of gold, is trapped in the matting, stones hurtle down the incline, crashing in great mounds on the banks. Thousands of rocky hillocks litter the shoreline. As we pass one barge, its blue painted steel, hull faded by the intense sun. The crew members wave. We beach our barca and clamber over the stone strewn shore toward the barge, moored along the bank. A man who appears to be in his 30s tells us that he has mined along the river for several years. He and his family own the barge. The entire clan, originally from Puerto Maldonado, lives abroad much of the time, or aboard much of the time, bunking in handmade beds, on deck beneath mosquito nets, and eating from a galley kitchen run by his mother. The din from the dredging engine is deafening, as the thunder of rocks tumbling into the sluice. Do you get a lot of gold? I ask. From the Smithsonian Magazine by Donovan Webster. Difficult vocabulary. Spurred, encouraged. To spur is to encourage. And spurred by the rising global demand. So this is encouraged by the rising global demand. The Amazon basin, the basin is a kind of sink as a noun. Chasm is a hole, big hole. Kind of a sink, but less organized, or less, its shape is less organized, less clear. Stave, to delay. They eat cocoa leaves to save exhaustion and hunger, so to delay the hunger and exhaustion. Siphon, suck out. So here as a verb, it siphons water from the nearby river. It sucks out water. Hefting, it means carrying. So they carry a huge chain, the workers. Gouged, covered. Terrestrial, it's in the earth, it's inhabiting earth, as opposed to extraterrestrial, it's from out of the earth. To raise, to completely destroy. So 64,000 acres, possibly much more, have been destroyed, razed. Contaminating the river with mercury. Contaminating means polluting. To contaminate, to pollute. To circumvent, to dodge or avoid. The cobblestone, or cobblestones, are small stones, kind of stones. A dredge, clean. Sluice, it's a slide to control water flow. So it's basically a slide that is tilted downwards, and it has very minor, very small kind of hills on its way. So, for example, if it's a 1 meter long or 2 meters long sluice, you would have 4 or 5 small hills. So when water runs down this slide, any heavy objects wanted, such as rocks that contain the gold, would stop at these mini hills. So this controls the water flow. To hurtle, to rush. The stones hurtle in this incline. To clamber is to climb. And leach is filter. To leach, to filter. The surge, also a verb, and could be a noun. In this context, it means gush. So to spur out, to be exploited out with force. Remediation, treatment, it's from remedy, is from this word as well, and it means treatment again. Reading questions, page 144. Now you may pause the video, try to solve the question that is only one, from A to H. This should take you about 20 to 25 minutes, and then come back. Or you may, as again, pause the video momentarily as we move from one question to the other. Answer the following questions in full sentences. Give line reference where relevant. A. Explain in your own words what's the meaning of gold rush. Kind of opinionated. The wording of this question is opinionated, but more or less it means the urgency and heavy desire to get gold. The rush that people feel, they want it urgently and heavily, or with a heavy desire. They want it now, and they want it really bad to get the gold. B. Using your own words, find another way to say gaping cavity, gouged, and pristine environments. The gaping cavity is a deep open hole in the ground. The gape and the cavity, they almost mean the same. An open and hole in the ground. And since we said gaping, it implies depth. To gouge is to dig out. So gouged means dug out. B3. Pristine environments, just clean locations, clean places. Pristine, clean, healthy, well preserved. C. In paragraph 5, the writer tells us that thousands of gold mining cavities are being dug in the state of Madre de Dio. Why is this area ecologically important? Give 3 reasons. It's one of the most biodiverse regions in the world, and it is still untouched by human occupation of, let's say, metropolitanism, which means that people did not really build a city of skyscrapers and of markets and of roads that cars walk on or drive on and then pollute everything. It is still unspoiled. It's still close to nature or close to natural. Third reason is that it includes countless varieties of species and trees. That's why this area is ecologically important. D. In paragraph 6, the writer says the destruction is more absolute than that caused by ranching or logging. Explain in your own words what the writer means by more absolute in this context. Well, the ranching is when you clear up a land for the livestock to be raised, and logging is for you just to clear trees to use their logs. Why is this more absolute than both? It is unlike the other 2 types, that is ranching and logging. This destruction goes deep in the earth, since miners are destroying the soil 50 feet down and contaminating rivers with mercury. The miners themselves are contaminated with mercury, their bodies, their inner organs, and their hands, and they move this contamination to their families and societies. And the river itself is contaminated with bits of this mercury that moves to the fish and hence moves to the food chain. So we consume fish as well. E. Explain 3 ways the mining described in this article damages the environment and say how this may long-term effects. As we've just said, the damages or the damage areas include Mercury is leaked up into the river, then consumed by fish, hence enters the food chain. The deforestation has increased 6 times, sixfolds, or by sixfold rate. There's a large barren area where rainforest is only visible in the distance, which itself may affect ecotourism. This area lives very much partially or in a huge chunk on ecotourism because it's an area of ecodiversity, the natural places, the natural landscapes there are of great touristic attraction. That's why if this area gets destroyed, the ecotourism itself will be destroyed. So they will lose money more. F. Explain the following in your words. The surge, a hedge against losses in the context of gold, an insatiable appetite for luxury goods made from this precious metal. Opinionated, partially opinionated answer. More or less, again, we should revolve around the same ideas. The surge, this is the sudden increase in the demand and the urgency for gold, as we said. A hedge against losses, this is reducing the risk of investment since gold holds its value. So basically, the investors in that area or in many regions around the world, they know they have a risk in investment. You may win, you may make money, or you may lose money, or you may make less money than expected. It depends on the supply and demand chain. But gold holds its value. That's why it is a hedge against losses. It is fortified against losses. Insatiable appetite for luxury goods made from this precious metal. This is greedy need, insatiable, greedy need for inessential, expensive products made of gold. The demand for gold is so high, that's why miners are partially, this is a partial reason why miners are digging gold 24/7, because people admire inessential, expensive products made from this metal. G. Explain why the majority of mines in Madre de Dios state are illegal. Because there are a lot of legal documents to obtain a permit, including the engineering specifications, the statements on how the environment will be protected, and how the land will be returned to its natural state. So people who are going at getting the permit feel this is too much trouble. That's why they don't do it legally. They do it illegally. Final question. Give 2 reasons why tourists may want to visit this area of Peru. It's tranquil and peaceful, and they may discover insects and animals unique to this area. This is also stated in the text and a bit logical, even if not explicitly stated. It's a natural Amazon area, so it's tranquil, peaceful, and definitely there are insects and animals specific only to that area. We're done for today. Thank you very much for listening. Stay safe and keep up the good work.